The phone trembled slightly in my hand as her words landed like loose coins scattering across the kitchen counter. "We've decided not to attend your ceremony, Jenna. Such a long trip for something so formal." My mother's voice held that saccharine tone she reserved for times she wanted to sound kind while breaking your heart on purpose. "Besides," she continued, "Olivia has her dance recital that weekend. I'm sure you understand." Through my apartment window, I could see my dress uniform hanging, crisp, precisely pressed, each medal lined up with military perfection. Honors earned through 3 deployments and 7 years of service that my family had always dismissed as just playing make-believe soldier. Presidential commendation letter lay open on the counter, the words "exceptional bravery under enemy fire" clearly displayed. "Actually, no," I said, my voice more controlled than I expected. "I don't understand. President of the United States is going to pin this medal on me. And you're choosing a high school dance recital over that?" A long silence followed, the kind that stretches like a crack in glass. Then a dramatic sigh. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Jenna. You know we've always supported your little interest." I looked at my reflection in the window. My jaw tightened. My shoulders pulled back on instinct, 7 years of discipline doing their work. "You're right, Mom," I said quietly. "I do understand. I'll make sure your names are removed from the guest list." My name is Jenna Lee. I'm 28 years old and a decorated sergeant in the U.S. Army. This is the story of how I forced my invisible service to become undeniable, even to the people who treated it like background noise. The first time I came home in uniform, I was 16. It wasn't the real thing yet, just my ROTC cadet gear, but I had spent an hour getting everything right. Every fold ironed to precision. My shoes were polished like glass. I stood in the living room, nervous but proud, waiting for someone to notice. Dad peeked over the top of his newspaper. "Bit much for school, isn't it?" Mom didn't even lift her eyes from Olivia's science fair board. "The military's just a phase, sweetie. You'll grow out of it." Then my older brother didn't glance away from his video game. He chuckled. "Playing dress up again, Jen?" And just like that, the weight of the uniform I hadn't even earned yet felt heavier, because I already respected it more than they ever respected me. I was always the background character. Quiet one. The dependable one. The one whose accomplishments barely made a sound beneath Olivia's dance ribbons and Ethan's football trophies. 7 years later, that phase had become a career. I had worked my way up to sergeant first class on merit alone. I'd survived battles in countries they couldn't even pronounce, lost brothers in arms, saved lives in the dust and heat, and still, none of it mattered to them. When I earned my first commendation medal, Ethan had texted, "Nice. I got one too for running a 5K. As if risking my life overseas was on par with a weekend jog for charity. The formal invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was embossed with gold, the presidential seal glinting as sunlight filtered through the blinds. My fingers trembled as I opened it, not from excitement but from a heavy sense of knowing exactly how this would go. Still, hope was a reflex I hadn't managed to outgrow. I called my mom anyway. She answered on the third ring. I explained the event, the honor, the medal, the fact that the president himself would be presenting it. She let me finish. Or at least she didn't interrupt. "That's lovely, Jenna," she said. "But you know we already have plans. Olivia's dance showcase is that weekend. National finals, she's worked so hard for this." So had I. Later that night, I sat in my apartment with the invitations spread across my coffee table. I stared at the ornate font, the presidential signature, the words "Distinguished Service." My chest felt tight, but not from sadness anymore, from resolve. I thought of all the birthdays I'd watched through a screen while they lit candles without me. All the times I'd heard "That's nice," while they packed up the car and drove for hours to cheer Olivia on in sequins and bows. I'd had enough. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email for the event coordinator. Subject line, "Guest list revision." I removed 4 names. Linda Lee, Richard Lee, Ethan Lee, Olivia Lee. This time, their absence would not be due to scheduling. It would be written. Official. Intentional. 6 days before the ceremony, I was back in the base gym. The boxing ring floor was cool against my feet as I moved through the rhythm I'd come to rely on. Strike, duck, reset, breathe. There was comfort in repetition. No judgment, no comparisons, just sweat and silence. When I stepped out of the ring, Grace was waiting by the bench. She stood with her arms folded loosely, her dark jacket blending into the background, but her presence commanded attention anyway. 52, my commanding officer moved with the kind of stillness that made everyone around her stand taller without even thinking about it. Her short salt and pepper hair was clipped close. She never bothered to dye it. "You're dropping too much weight into your left," she said, handing me a bottle of water. "I know," I muttered between gulps. "Muscle memory." Grace gave a slow nod. That was all the reply I'd get. It was enough. We walked together to the base cafe, small, a little rundown, mugs chipped at the rims, and the coffee always tasted slightly burnt. But it was quiet. Safe. "Did you invite them?" she asked softly, 2 sips in. I didn't need clarification. Course I knew who she meant. "They don't come to my stuff," I replied, eyes fixed on the coffee swirling in my cup. "Not ever." She didn't speak, but the silence wasn't empty. It was a mirror. And I hated mirrors. I remembered junior year. There'd been a statewide essay competition. I'd written about integrity, about the weight of a uniform I hadn't yet earned. The judges had loved it. I'd received a certificate with my name printed proudly across it. No one came to the award presentation. Olivia had cheer regionals that day. Mom drove 5 hours to watch her do high kicks and coordinated bows. When I got home, I told her, "I won." She stirred a pot on the stove and replied without looking up, "Oh, you wrote something?" Some memories don't fade. They harden. Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a small ceramic planter. Inside it was a bonsai tree, sturdy, quiet, curved with intention. She slid it across the table without saying a word. "I started this the day you enlisted," she said. "It's yours now." I stared at it, surprised. The trunk was thicker than I'd expected. It looked resilient, alive. She ran a finger across a freshly pruned branch. "You cut it back hard," she said. "Not to hurt it. To teach it how to grow strong." When I looked up at her, she wasn't smiling, but her gaze had softened. "You've done enough growing under someone else's shears, Jenna." That night, back in my room, I placed the bonsai on the windowsill. Side, the base lights shimmered against the dark like stars pretending to be something smaller. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked down at the ceremony invitation once more, slowly tracing the edge of the gold seal with my thumb. I folded it once. Then again. Then a third time, not out of hesitation but something quieter. Grace's words echoed in my mind. "You don't need an audience to be legitimate. Some audiences don't deserve a seat at all." I crossed the room and stood in front of the dresser. My uniform hung to the side, pressed, ready, untouched. I reached for the velvet pouch holding my nameplate. My fingertips ran over the edges slowly, with care. Then I pinned it above the left pocket. "I'm going alone," I said aloud. Not as a rebellion. Not to make a statement. But because I finally understood. This was never for them. There were no tears. Just breath. And a calm sense that maybe, just maybe, I was always meant to walk this path on my own. For so long, I believed proof would be enough. That if I just showed them the work, the sacrifice, the stripes, they'd see me. Understand me. Be proud. But they were never interested in proof. They wanted a performance. Preferably one where they held center stage. Well, if they wouldn't attend, they could still live with the image burned in their minds. I landed in Washington, D.C. just as the sky turned the color of porcelain. Soft pinks and pale blues stretched over the city, delicate as breath. The cherry blossoms were starting to open along the sidewalks, early signs of spring pushing through the cold. My hotel window overlooked the Capitol dome, tall and dignified. The glass was so clean, the city outside looked like a painting. The next morning, I met Marcus Whitmore at a small cafe near Logan Circle. He was already seated when I walked in, gray sweater, dark slacks, a leather notebook beside his cup. He didn't rise. Didn't smile wide. Just gave a small nod when our eyes met. I liked that. "I read your brief," he said as I sat down, his voice low and composed. You're not looking for attention. You're after something that lasts. Exactly, I said. No labels. No drama. Just moments that hold their weight. He understood without needing more. He knew I wouldn't pose. That this wasn't just my story, it was also about what was absent. Marcus was Grace's nephew, a photojournalist she trusted. She'd mentioned him after I said I wanted the ceremony captured, but in my own way. You mind if I scout the venue with you? He asked. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. That afternoon, we walked through the ceremony hall together. Marcus moved like a whisper, his camera the only thing that spoke, a soft click here and there, never intrusive. At one point, he paused beside me, raised the camera slightly. What exactly are we capturing? He asked. I met his gaze squarely. What they'll never be part of. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. He simply raised the lens and clicked once. That evening, back in my hotel room, I reviewed the seating chart one last time. 30 names. Mentors. Peers. People who had stood beside me when it counted. The general who once pulled me aside in Okinawa to say, "You lead with stillness." That's rare. Grace, of course. But where the name card should have read Linda Lee, Richard Lee, Ethan Lee, and Olivia Lee, there was nothing. Just 4 blank spots. And that was exactly the point. I had emailed the coordinator earlier with a specific request. Keep their chairs. Keep the name placards. But leave them empty. Let the empty seats speak louder than excuses ever could. Let their absence be noticed, recorded, undeniable. Not a scheduling conflict. Not a miscommunication. A choice. A deliberate, visible absence. Ping cut through the stillness. My phone screen lit up with a name, Megan. Wait. You're seriously going through with this? My cousin. The only one who ever noticed when I was missing from family photos. The only one who sometimes asked how I was doing, but never loudly, never in front of the others. We'd grown up almost like sisters. But when it came to conflict, Megan always chose safety. Silence. Path of least resistance. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached for the small wooden box I'd packed before leaving home. Inside was a single copy of the ceremony program. I unfolded it and placed it gently under the soft glow of the bedside lamp. Sergeant First Class Jenna Lee. United States Armed Forces. Distinguished Service Commendation. No footnotes. No disclaimers. No extra explanations. Just facts. Just me. There was a rare stillness in that hotel suite. Not pride, not nerves, but something in between. Like the pause right before a wave breaks. An aide would soon come to adjust my cuffs, check my ribbon bar. Everything would look sharp, precise, controlled. But for now, I was alone with the truth. In the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Her jaw was set. Her expression unreadable. The kind of face that might belong on a news article if you didn't know what it had cost. I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app. Typed 2 words. Family includes. I didn't send it. I never would. But I needed to write it. To see it. Like a permission slip I didn't know I'd always needed. There was a quiet in the waiting room that felt heavier than sound. Not pride. Not fear. Just a pause, like the hush before a storm or the breath held between 2 waves. An aide smoothed the cuffs of my uniform, moving with practiced hands. Another adjusted my ribbon bar without a word. No one spoke unless necessary. In the mirror, the woman staring back looked composed. Immovable. Almost unfamiliar. 2 minutes, someone called softly from the hallway. I nodded. My breathing steady. Shoulders squared. Steps deliberate. The applause started as names were read, polite, formal, measured. I didn't peek through the curtain. I didn't need to. Then my name was called. The door opened. And I stepped forward. The hall was regal but restrained. High ceilings, marble floors, banners in navy and crimson hanging with weight. Rows of dignitaries, officers, and guests filled the chairs. A long aisle stretched ahead, polished and waiting. My footsteps echoed softly as I walked toward the dais. For exceptional service, leadership under fire, and unwavering dedication. Sergeant First Class Jenna Lee. Applause followed, distant, dignified, but loud enough to reach every corner of the room. A senior general stepped forward, someone I'd only ever seen in official memos. His handshake was firm, his nod sincere. The medal was pinned carefully, respectfully. A flash went off, Marcus just beyond the frame, capturing the exact moment. I turned toward the audience. And there it was, the Lee family row. 6 white chairs, perfectly aligned. Pristine. Untouched. Each with a nameplate standing like a tiny monument to what was missing. I didn't stop. But my eyes landed on them once. And then I found Grace. She sat at the far end of the hall, her posture calm, hands resting gently in her lap. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just met my gaze and gave the smallest, surest nod. And in that one gesture, she gave me something more powerful than applause ever could. As I walked past the row meant for my family, I saw a flicker of light through the flags. Marcus again. His camera lifted, silent. Click. I didn't look at the lens. I didn't need to. He already had what he came for. Back at the hotel suite, I peeled off the uniform piece by piece. Each item folded with the care it deserved. The medal stayed on the dresser, resting in its velvet cradle, not for show, just for presence. Side, the city glowed. Capital lights flickered on one by one, like stars remembering their roles. My phone buzzed. Olivia tagged you in a post. I opened it. There it was, the photo Marcus had sent me privately. I'd posted it once on my barely used Instagram, after someone from the event asked to include it in the official recap. She must have found it there. The image showed me mid-stride, walking past the untouched Lee row. The flag behind me. My chin lifted. Back straight. Her caption? Okay, this is actually legit. No comment. No call. Just that. I stared at the screen. Not angry. Not sad. Just blank. I didn't reply. Didn't even consider it. Some spaces were never meant for them. But that didn't make the space any less mine. 2 days later, I posted 3 photos. No caption. No hashtags. Just moments. The first, me mid-stage, uniform crisp, posture grounded. The second, a close-up, medal in hand, nameplate gleaming, flag blurred behind it. The third, a candid Marcus had taken after the ceremony. I was laughing, really laughing, surprised by it. Grace beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder, the light catching us just right. Then I put my phone down and made tea. 7 minutes passed. Then the comments started. Absolutely stunning. Proud of you, Sergeant. Didn't even know you were being honored. Credible. This looks like something from Arlington. I scrolled. Slowly. Quietly. Old college friends. A professor I hadn't spoken to in years. My former team leader from overseas. Names I hadn't expected. But they showed up anyway. And then, the shift. Olivia, you could have told us it was this big. No punctuation. Just that. Then a text from Ethan. Kind of messed up, you left us out, TBH. Typing bubbles came. Disappeared. Came again. Then my voicemail pinged. Linda. I listened with my eyes closed. Jenna. Her voice was tight, breathless, like she'd rushed up a staircase. You embarrassed us by not including us. You know that, right? This isn't how families treat each other. I didn't cry. Didn't laugh. I opened my notes app. Typed. Family includes. I didn't send it. I never will. But seeing it written felt like signing something sacred. A truth I had waited too long to accept. The photos kept rising. More likes, more reposts, more strangers saying what my own family never had the courage to. And it didn't feel like validation. Felt like confirmation. Not of who I had become, but of who they had refused to see all along. When I was 17, I was published in a small regional magazine, an essay about resilience. I printed a copy and brought it home, holding it like something sacred. Mom glanced at the cover. Well, it's not the New York Times, is it? I folded the magazine in half and slid it under my bed, buried it like shame. Now here I was, folded too, but upright, visible. And now they were finally noticing. A new notification appeared. Megan, I judged you based on them. I was wrong. If it's still okay, I'd like to see you. No excuses. Just, if you'll have me. No grand speech. No defense. Just truth. Plain and simple. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone warm in my hand, a mug of tea beside me steaming softly in the quiet. I thought for a long while. Then typed. Dinner when I'm back. And I meant it. They saw the photo. But they didn't live the moment. They never stood in the room. Never heard the silence. Never felt the weight behind the applause. A month had passed since DC, and spring was starting to soften the edges of San Diego again. My apartment sat still, the gentle sound of ocean waves rolling in through the open window, the kettle humming quietly as it cooled. The medals were finally framed. I hadn't planned to display them, it never felt like my style, but something had shifted. They didn't hang out of pride. They hung out of peace. Not centered. Not spotlit. Just present. Like me. Grace's bonsai had filled out too. Its delicate green leaves stretched toward the sun, slow and certain. I had pruned it the day before, hands steady, no hesitation. The first time I trimmed it, I was afraid. Afraid of cutting too much. Afraid of hurting something growing. But now it felt like rhythm. Quiet knowing. Conversation without words. Then at 6:03 the doorbell rang. I opened it. Megan stood there, holding a Tupperware container wrapped in a checkered towel. I made the rice cake you used to like, she said softly. No drama. No apology. Just her. Showing up. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, taking everything in, the bonsai, the medals, the framed photo from the ceremony. She stopped in front of it and whispered. I didn't realize it looked like that. We didn't rush to talk. I set the table for two, lit a small candle, and pulled out an old photo album I hadn't touched in years. We sat across from each other, flipping through the creaky plastic pages. Birthdays. Beach trips. Weddings. Again and again, there I was. Blurred, cut off, half-turned, somewhere near the edge of the frame. Present, but never quite seen. Megan lingered on one picture longer than the rest. I never noticed, she said, voice breaking. You were always there and we never really saw you. She cried. I didn't. I let her. We ate quietly. The rice cake was too sweet, a little dense, just like I remembered. But it was made with care. Like childhood, revisited with clear eyes. Later that evening, Grace stopped by. She didn't bring advice or commentary, just tea. And presence. The kind of presence that filled a space without needing to be loud. We moved to the patio, mugs in hand. The sun dipped slowly toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the ocean. Waves rolled in with their timeless rhythm, salt and silence carried on the breeze. I brought out a letter, one I had written the night before. My handwriting was neat. The salutation read, Mom. I didn't read it aloud. Didn't explain it. Instead, I folded the letter once, then again, and tucked it into the hallway drawer labeled, Unsent. They don't get the last word, I said, barely above a whisper, watching the sky shift from orange to deep slate. Grace nodded once. Megan reached across the table and gently took my hand. We clinked teacups, no toast, no ceremony. Just a simple, shared stillness. I looked out at the sea. Not searching. Not hoping. Just being. Behind me, the medals on the wall didn't feel like trophies anymore. They were reminders. Of who I chose to become. Of what I built, piece by piece, without applause, without permission. And most importantly, without them. There was no audience in my apartment that night. No camera flash. No standing ovation. Just the hush of the waves. And the quiet company of those who chose to stay. And honestly, that's enough. Sometimes the people who should love us the loudest fall silent when it matters most. But love, real love, doesn't demand recognition. It shows up. Not for the photo. not for the credit, but for you. And if we spend our lives waiting for the wrong people to see us, we risk missing the ones who already do.